Duncan Blackett from Digital Turbine, who's going to moderate for us. We're going to have Claire Rozain from Product Madness and Anushka from Gram Games. And so, hey, how you doing? We're going to I'm going to get you guys to talk to us about using preloads as the ultimate playable ad.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are zooming in from. It's great that you've all managed to join us here for this panel discussion today. So, using preloads as the ultimate playable ad. So look, for context, Digital Turbine is the leading player in app discovery. We partner with carriers and OEMs across the globe to really do the hardest thing in mobile user acquisition. We get your game on mobile devices. Preloads really are the ultimate playable ad. Joining me today, I have Claire Rozain from Product Madness, the publisher of social casino hits such as Heart of Vegas and Cashman Casino, and also Anushka Mukherjee, UA manager at Gram Games, home to such puzzle classics as Merge Dragons and Merge Magic. Guys, thank you so much for taking part today.
Lovely to be here.
So how are preloads a playable ad, I hear you ask? Well, they're both about app discovery and crucially about reducing friction in app discovery. So for my mind, we really have two types of friction that impact user acquisition. We have both physical friction and we also have mental friction. So on the physical side of things, I'm really talking about the process of clicking, scrolling, tapping, waiting, finding the conversion fall off all along that funnel. And on the mental side, you know, when a user's mind is stuck in that game or in that social feed, and they really just don't want to leave. So my first question for the panel, and let's kick off with Anushka and followed by Claire. Can you guys give me some examples of how you've used different types of solutions to address friction in UA? You know, what's worked and how well, the pros and cons of those?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess each solution has its own sources of friction it faces. So when we talk about rewarded ads and playables, I guess the aim we look at is to increase the appeal of the ads. So the ads need to be as snappy as possible in order to gain the user's attention, because the users are watching the ad with the intention to just collect the reward at the end of it. So at Gram, we have a very data-oriented creative testing process, and we test different concepts as well as iterate on the top concepts continuously in order to make sure that we're keeping up with the users who are viewing the ads and they're not facing any ad fatigue. While this is useful to sort of combat the mental friction side of things, I feel the physical friction part is still there. And this is something preloads help us overcome. So while playables give you a mini experience of the game, preloads give you a much more real experience of the game, and it lets you discover each and every aspect of the game. Whereas playables are more limited to a certain aspect, and even the interaction is very limited.
Claire, what are your thoughts? Do you share Anushka's train of thought there? Is there anything you disagree with? We're really keen to know what you think about this subject.
So I really agree with Anushka. I think it's a lot of valuable points. Like, you know, not everyone likes the ads. So of course, the marketer always iterate on creatives to make you like it, to make it more appealing and so on. But, you know, sometimes we can make it so appealing that we lose the spirit of the game. I think it's what everyone saw with misleading ads. So I actually like playables, but there is so many friction between the user is going to play the playable and then when he's going to pay into my application. Like the funnel is really long, to be honest. So I would say that the main friction I have is really on the creative. We iterate more and more, and sometimes we go so far away from the gameplay and we actually lose our user because we have such an incredible CTR. And then when we see the conversion rate, the user is like, oh, it's a social casino game, maybe I wouldn't be interested into it, right? So in contrast, when you have it directly on your phone, like you can't be closer to your user than the phone, it will directly experience the game. And to me, that's the real value I saw product managers saw in Digital Turbine, is that you can't be closer than your user than in your phone, actually.
Claire, that's a really interesting point you raise, and certainly by being direct on the device, you're directly targeting a new user. Just coming back to a point you mentioned with regards to creatives, you know, how many different types of creatives will you test before you have confidence in going to market with a certain type of creative? Is it a simple A/B test, 1 or 2 different types, or is it 3, 4, 5, 6?
So actually, it's a lot of creative, and as you say, it will be so expensive for us, because when you A/B test, of course, you need a lot of resources. You test different creative, but also those creative you iterate on to make them target some different demographics as well. So you have different location where a creative, for instance, will outperform in Japan and will absolutely not perform in France, for instance. I think today, this morning, we saw it really well in the previous presentation, that testing those creative is actually really takes a lot of resources, and you need always to iterate to make the great creative for the right audience, and it's really time consuming, to be honest.
Some really great insights there. I'm pretty sure that's something that every game studio, you know, whether experienced or up and coming, can really learn from. Thank you. So on to the next discussion point. Now, Phoenix Marketing are a top 50 US-based research company. We recently conducted a study, and they asked 1,000 gamers if they find ads useful. Now, cue shock, 47% of gamers found that they don't find ads useful. Gaming is one of our most popular ad categories at Digital Turbine. And a reason preloads are appealing to gamers might just be that gamers hate ads. In fact, ComScore recently reported that 67% of consumers rarely or never install new apps. That's more than 2 out of 3 users. So, question for Anushka. Why do you think this is? Why is it so difficult to attract a new user? And what sources of friction do you feel are most responsible for this trend? Is it friction in discovery? Is it friction in the actual install itself? Really keen to hear your thoughts.
So definitely, I guess, as we discussed in the previous question, the mental friction definitely is the main factor here, that users are not watching the ad with the intention of installing a new app. Their intention is to collect the reward at the end of the ad. So that, in addition to that factor, there are a few factors which make the mental friction even higher. And I feel one of the contributing factors there is ad fatigue. So a lot of the games, especially in the casual puzzle category, have very similar ads. So users sort of blur out in terms of the difference, and you also lose your edge, the uniqueness of your game compared to the other competitors in the same genre, as well as the users sometimes end up seeing your ad too many times, the same ad. So that just means the creative iteration isn't as quick as it should be. So definitely ad fatigue is an important factor. And in addition to that, as Claire mentioned, the representativity of the ad is really important, because sometimes the iterations go too far from the real game, and that impacts the post-install metrics. And I guess that sort of completely destroys the point, and for users as well. So in the future, they don't know whether or not to trust an ad enough to actually install the app.
Trust, that's a really key point there. Claire, how about your thoughts? Would you agree with Anushka on most of her points there?
I totally agree, to be honest, and I would even add that when you think of your user journey on internet, I mean, do you go on Facebook to see ads? Like, let's be honest, the answer is no. You are going to see some amazing ads, so you are going to install some some app for sure, because you're going to see to say, oh my God, what is this? But it's not the case for everyone. And depending on your audience as well, if it's a gaming audience, I'm a gamer myself, I have ad blocker everywhere, you will not reach this audience. So it's really interesting today to speak about this friction, because I feel like in the media mix, it's not something that is always raised, all this audience that you don't always reach. So definitely, I would say that Preload have a big advantage on this, because you can reach this audience that is not on Facebook to watch ads, or is not on TikTok to watch ads, or is not on Twitch or so on to watch ads. So definitely, I would say Preload is really interesting into that, but it's really straightforward. You have the application on your smartphone, and it makes the experience sometimes better because less intrusive in your user journey in other applications.
That's really interesting. So there really is both strong physical and mental friction out there from, new users discovering your games, but also in actually getting them to install what once they do. Just to push you a little bit further on ad block, do you see ad block as an increasing trend? And what percentage do you think that means that the install process drops? Does it account for a drop off in, say, 20% of installs, or do you think it would be higher?
So on this, it really depends on the market, to be honest. Like we saw that the German market is really high in ad blocker, for instance, and it depends also on all the noise the media are doing around the ad blocker. Like I remember a few years ago, when some scandal happened about ad blocker whitelisted, for instance, we saw the ad blocker that raised a lot, especially in Europe. So it depends on the percentage, to be honest, depending on the location. But I think, Duncan, you have some nice number about it anyway.
You never know, Claire, you never know. So look, I think the key takeaway here is that preloads, like Playable ads, are a discovery solution. But people don't want ads. They want to discover apps for themselves. And what better way to do that than with an app preloaded on a device? So according to the same Phoenix marketing study, 26% of gamers found preloaded games very helpful in terms of their app discovery, more so than app store recommendations, online ads, or even ads on TV. My thoughts are that 40 to 50% of consumers play games and look for games actively. So it should be no surprise that preloads top this list. Gamers just love easy game discovery. Now, Claire, I'm sure you would agree with me that gamers love easy game discovery. So how do you go about cross-promoting your studio's other titles to existing users?
To be really honest, on my side, on product management, it's a real job to cross-promote, because it's highly scientific games.
It's difficult, right? It's difficult.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So I would say that this really rely on the number of live ops events that you will have, the kind of people also we want to cross promote, and the one we don't see value in it. So it's not something easy, to be honest, for us.
Anushka, same question to you. How does Gram Games go about its own cross promotional activities, and is it a big part of your UA mix?
So at Gram Games, our main aim is to grow our merch portfolio. And in order to do that, it starts from the first part of the funnel, so the creative part. And so for Merge Dragons and Merge Magic, we always focus on maintaining the uniqueness of both games and making sure the creatives are as unique and portray those unique features of the game. And I think that's the biggest contributing factor we have towards covering a larger audience base, which is pretty much the purpose of our cross-promotion activities.
Yeah, sure. Some really great insights there, guys. I think the key takeaway is that cross-promotion, targeting, in actual fact, is very, very difficult. Something to share with the floor. So Digital Turbine have a piece of technology called Single Tap, and that enables users to install a game direct to a user while they're in an existing gaming experience. So for a first-hand example, Anushka, let's just say you've got an active user of Merge Dragons, but you want to cross-promote Merge Magic. What you could do is serve a banner install ad while that user is playing Merge Dragons, a banner install ad promoting Merge Dragons, and using this single tap technology, the user can click to install Merge Dragons by remaining in their native gaming experience that is Merge Dragons. You know, there's no install friction, there's no redirect, it's just a single tap to install. So I would invite the audience listening to perhaps push me and ask me some questions on that as we conclude this panel discussion. So look, as we move to end this session, it's fair to say that both playable ads and preloads are about see, try, and play. But really, preloads are about the see, try, get, play. The get being the preload itself. Anushka, question to you, but what emerging new innovation or technology do you feel would be most helpful in removing friction or indeed simplifying the app discovery process?
So I think this perfectly ties into your point at the previous question. So I feel since we've discussed so much about the mental friction of the users not intending to install an app, if it's a more native placement, as you described for the single tap, I guess it would be very much relevant to the user and they don't get distracted while playing their own game. So definitely that helps reduce friction and also simplifies the discovery process. In addition to it, I feel the non-traditional UA sources are a contributing factor to increase the familiarity of the app as well. So recently we've been trying a lot of like influencer campaigns. We even run Merge Dragons' first ever TV commercial in the UK. And I guess those help us definitely increase the familiarity of the titles. And then in order to like sort of simplify the discovery as well for users when they revisit the ad later or see the icon somewhere. Yeah.
Wow, it's great to see so many channels now being employed in the process of app promotion and discovery. Now, Claire, I know you're a bit of an expert on all things influencer. Is that a big part of what Product Madness are engaging right now?
Yeah, definitely, because I think all games now are in the mindset, you know, to be closer to the user. And I feel like, for instance, just to speak about the playable, like, yes, playable is good because you might engage your user and make him see what is into your game, if it's realistic, of course. But think about everyone. Like when you think at all your user, not all your user have the last device. Not everyone has an amazing connection. So you need also to think smartly of your user experience on the advertising space and where to advertise. And when you multiply the touch point, actually, it's a really smart way to at one point in the user journey, get your user. And I think, to be honest, that what is good in Preload is that it's preload. Like, you know, your user opens the application and is straight into the game. And to me, it's like the best way to be close to him and to convince him with what you got, like your proper USP, which is your game. You directly make him have your game. So I think this is really good. And of course, there is more and more cloud experiences on internet with playable clouds and so on. But I would say that pre-install have a great future because to me, it's what is at the moment the most straightforward.
Thank you, Claire. Anushka, did you have anything else to add on to Claire's point?
I think Claire just summed it up perfectly.
Hey, Hendrix. So we're into the main time. I've got there are a few questions that have popped up. I want to chuck you. I think it's also probably worth noting that preloads have been around for quite a long time, and it actually became a major part of what kept Java games going for quite a long time. Was the process of preload. I think we were one of the earliest to use that back in like 2004 when I was running This is where I'll get stick for saying when I was at 3, because I'm always getting told off for referring back to the old days of Java games. But there was one concern. I think Sai Pranith Gunupta was asking this, and one concern that came back from that era, which is there not a risk that pre-install apps are considered bloatware? And that then kind of causes other longer-term issues, particularly with the availability of memory on the device itself. Does anyone have any kind of thoughts on how we deal with that issue?
I can add a few quick points in, but I'd also like to ask Claire and Anushka for their opinions as well. So it's interesting that you go back to those old Java days. You know, the preloads of today have changed beyond all recognition from the preloads as before. You know,
Absolutely.
Gone are the days where preloads are hard coded onto the device. They then sit in a warehouse for months, then put on a ship, and 6 weeks later they end up at port, and 6 months after that they eventually end up in the user's hands. We preload apps onto newly activated Android devices across the globe, and we do it in a live environment. So we directly take the app that is currently housed in the Google Play Store, and we directly preload that onto a new user's handset. Now, there's quite a few solutions that we have to offer to market, and bloatware is absolutely something that we cannot be accused of. So every app that is preloaded goes through a very rigorous approval process for things like content, but also for things like battery drainage, for also things like data consumption. We make sure that the user has the best install experience and app discovery experience that they can. And one of our solutions is actually an app recommendation wizard, whereby the new user who's just bought their latest Android device can actually choose which apps they want to have installed on their device. So they're the most engaged they're ever going to be. They've just bought their new Android device. They're served with an app recommendation screen. They can select a utility app. They can select a gaming app. They can select a travel app and then install. And the advantage for the developer is that they acquire a new user when they are most engaged. At that point, they've just activated a new device. So I think the days of bloatware and that analogy, making it analogous with preloads are long gone. Claire, Anushka, would you like to come in there from a developer's point of view?
I mean, for us, it's always been that the onboarding process for the users has been very pleasant, especially with Digital Turbine, and the whole approval process, as Duncan mentioned, is so rigorous on their end that it does not cause any such problems for us. And of course, if we want to ensure that the user gets the best experience, we can always have the app visit campaigns so that we are absolutely sure that there's no space left behind, and we've done the best we could in terms of giving the user a good discovery process.
Yeah, to be honest, I've not much to add because I join all what Anushka said, and I will say that see if actually it bothers the user or not is the retention. And at the moment of what we see on cross-player retention for Digital Turbine is really good. So I would say that user seems to be convinced by how Digital Turbine kind of do all this magic and discovery.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing here is that, as you've all said, I mean, this isn't the same thing where we're just chucking something on and putting it onto a device when it's being created and sending it off. We're actually doing this process live at the point where the user doesn't have that contention. And as long as we're managing the data appropriately and the kind of the choices so that it can be as convenient as possible, that's great. And again, different. I mean, I personally hate playable ads. So much so I delete the games that have them because I just can't face putting up with a rubbish version of a game I probably didn't want to play in the first place. But I'm a bit biased because I actually think there's a lot of value in other kinds of ads. I mean, personally, I use rewarded ads as a way of discovering content. I'm a bit biased on that because I was obviously involved in the early days of that industry. But what I think is fascinating about the differences is working out when it's appropriate for the player. There was another question that came up I want to get into, which I think is also really interesting and hopefully nice and challenging. So how do we track fraud with preloads? This is from an anonymous attendee, so I can't tell you who it was this time. It's not me. So when you've got this preload process happening, how does the game developer and the publisher, etc., know that they're getting is a genuine user? All this other stuff. Any kind of particular thoughts on that?
Oh, it's another fantastic question. So Digital Turbine have a piece of technology that's called Ignite. And think of Ignite as an APK. And this APK sits on the firmware of all of our partner devices. So devices, whether they are sold through the Verizon or AT&T network in the US, or whether they're through our other OEM partners outside of the US. All of our partner devices have our Ignite technology on. So we're effectively a closed circuit. There's no instances whereby there can be misattribution or indeed stolen clicks. Now, we work with all of the major MMPs that are out there, and we can go to market and we can be absolutely clear on this with 100% certainty that we are 100% fraud free. And I would invite Claire and Anushka to share their points on that subject as well. And guys, these are some of our largest partners, so I would welcome their response.
I mean, for us personally, whenever we've checked, like, if there's any traces of fraud or anything like that, we've never seen anything like that. And especially because of the Ignite technology that Duncan mentioned. And in addition to it, if you want to ever try comparing if there's misattribution or something, whenever we've checked it on our end, there doesn't seem to be the case. And we've scaled up quite a bit with them. And at this scale, we don't see anything. So we're quite confident.
Yeah, and I think that's because it feels to me like you've got a constrained environment where you're managing that process in a live way, and like you say, you're using your APK to manage the process, and obviously then there's a whole bunch of areas about protection that you can go there. So, in terms of kind of like understanding, how to optimize the experience. So how do you think that when you're looking at a game, working with yourselves, what is the best way for them to work with you? How do they think about optimizing, activating audiences? Or is it more of a passive experience where because the preload's there, they don't have to worry too much about its placement? I mean, do you have any particular views on that?
Yeah, I do. So we've got a number of different solutions that work in different ways and actually produce different performances. Its most simplest form, the way that we optimize really is by a bid rate. And that bid rate determines how much fill an ad campaign, let's just say it's for Heart of Vegas, or let's just say it's for Merged Dragons, actually gets on a device. And it's by changing that bid rate, moving it up or down, that we can determine how much fill we get on a device. Generally speaking, when you see great performance on a device, let's say it's a high-end device, we'll look to increase that rate so we get more fill on those devices. And as a campaign continues, it's about testing different devices, whether they're high range, mid-range, or an entry-level device, to make sure that for that acquired user, the developer is paying the right bid rate. And that's a continual process, and performance changes for a number of reasons, from seasonality to global events. There are many different influences. So it's through that gradual process of optimization, working directly with an account manager, that eventually we find the right bid rate to support the right device to get the best possible ROAS for the developer. And then it's about rolling out that same process across all the suite of products that we have, where it's a dynamic install, placing an ad directly onto the home screen of a newly activated device, or whether it's through our Wizard solution, which is an app recommendation tool that users go through when they set up a device for the first time, right through to our dedicated gaming folders that exist on devices in the US. So optimization is full, it's complete, it's ongoing. And we lean very heavily actually on the MMPs to provide us with the required post-back data to allow us to inform us about the relative performance of different devices, and of course the campaigns across those different devices and different solutions as well. So the likes of Claire, the likes of Anushka will work very closely with an account manager and relying upon data from an MMP to make informed decisions about the way we go about the optimization process.
Yeah, actually, yeah, 100%. And I want to thank you, Catherine, which is doing an amazing work for several years for us. And I would say as well that having a great relationship with our account manager at Digital Turbine is definitely something that make us work better and ask all the questions we have around fraud and so on. And we didn't see any fraud, and we are really strong in fraud because in social casino, of course, we don't want to pay for fraud. So, you know, the users are quite expensive, so we want really valuable users. So definitely, I agree with it.
So we're unfortunately out of time. Anushka, did you want to add anything to that last point very quickly?
No, I think Claire summed it up perfectly. That's the same experience we've had.
Great. On that note, then, I'm going to say thank you, Duncan, Claire, and Anushka for that time. And I think, pre-installs are obviously clearly an important part of the mix that we have available to us, and they add a different dimension to how we can identify target and obviously kind of manage our engagement with clients. So, with players, clients, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. So that is the morning slot for the growth track done.